All right, what's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. So, as we continue with these stories of my, I guess, becoming, so to speak, or whatever that looks like, I want to take you guys through a time where I consider it a moment of clarity. And I think it's important that we talk about those moments of clarity because those are really um, those times where we are like at the precipice or the turning point of that next phase or that higher phase in our journeys or in our lives, period. And so I wanted to share mine because it came in a very unlikely way, and I think if anybody out there is wondering what is my moment of clarity, and maybe you are, doing your manifesting techniques, maybe you are, practicing daily mantras, maybe you're praying, meditating, whatever that looks like, and it's not as apparent as you would like it to be. Um, I'm hoping that in sharing my moment of clarity, that it can perhaps help you define or make clear your moment. So I was a young parent. I was a young parent. I had my daughter at 16, which you'll hear about in another podcast, or maybe you already have heard in one of my other podcasts. But I was a young parent. I had a kid at 16, and that pushed me to pursue a career that I didn't think, or a job, should I say, it caused me to pursue a career that I didn't think initially I would want to. Like when you're growing up and people ask you what you want to become, that kind of thing. I originally said that I wanted to be a doctor. I believe that was my very first response to that question. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And I think at the time I knew that well, I guess a psychiatrist is a medical doctor, but I didn't want to be a doctor that, like a surgeon or anything like that. I knew that I wanted to be a psychiatrist, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They are medical doctors. I don't, but when I think about the doctors that are really in the field and they are, doing the hands-on things in a different capacity. Anyway, what I'm saying is that I knew I wanted to be a psychiatrist, that kind of doctor in my mind. And so as I kind of got older or kind of as I moved through my adolescence, there was a point in time where I considered that if my primary wasn't a doctor, that it would be a model and maybe an actor. And for some reason, I really don't, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know that I believed at the time that I actually could be a model. I think I saw it as something very fascinating, and I I think I saw it as very fascinating, and I think I was curious about it, but if I'm being very honest with you, I really, and this is my first time mentioning this, I don't really believe that I believed I could be a model. I don't think so. But back then, I was like, okay, and I sent in my photos to modeling agencies. I did get one in New York. I can't even remember the name of it back then, but anyway, I can't remember. But there was an agency that wanted me to come out, and I couldn't because I didn't have the money. My mom was like, "Yeah, no, it's not happening." And so I was like, "Oh my God, like, I'm not gonna be able to be a model." Now, today, when I look back at the pictures I've seen, and I'm like, they are atrocious. But, the professionals probably saw something that I did not see. Now, possibly 6'1", kind of a brighter complexion or whatever. I kind of have some good things going on for me. So now I probably understand why they did, but back then I wasn't confident enough in my appearance. I mean, I didn't think I looked bad, but I didn't think I looked great either. But either way, the first job, the first career I thought of was being a doctor. That seemed practical. As I grew into being a teenager, I said that I wanted to model and act. Okay. Fast forward to 16, right? That's a short little sprint. But fast forward to 16, and here I am with a kid. So obviously, that came at a time where I wasn't fully, prepared mentally, emotionally, financially. I just wasn't prepared. But at 15, because you gotta wait the 9 months for those of y'all that are like, wait a minute, you gotta wait the 9 months. So I knew that I had to do something because I was in anticipation of having this child, freaking out along the way. And so my high school offered these career programs. And in these career programs, there was like a medical assistant certificate, there was automotive, there was uh, cosmetology. And so at the time, I was like, I could do this medical assistant thing. And that would probably be a really good thing to do just in the interim, and it seemed like it would be on track for me to still be a doctor at some point, right? It just in my mind at the time, that's what it seemed like it was right. So I was like, yeah, this could be like step one of getting there and getting patient experience, sure. And so the term before you get into those programs, you sign up or whatever, and then they'll let you know if you were able to get into the program. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I remember my counselor kind of pulling me in and saying, I know you signed up for this medical assistant program, but unfortunately the medical assistant program is not going to be back until next year. And I was like, dear God, like, what am I gonna do now? Because I was like, I'm not doing automotive because I just am not like I'm not doing that. And I was like, cosmetology ain't my thing either. So I'm like, oh my God, like what else am I gonna do? Like I have to make money. And I knew I wasn't one of those fast food people because my patience and my penchant for BS is just very, very short. And I just had always heard like my friends that worked in fast food, they were like, yeah, no. And so I just knew I was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna be able to do that. So I was like, "Well, what else you got?" Like, And he was like, "Well, they alternate every other year, the CNA program and the medical assistant program." And I was like, "CNA, what is that? Like, what is that?" And so, again, Google wasn't a thing, you guys, then. Google wasn't a thing. It was Ask Jeeves at the time. So you're probably like, well, you could just Google it. No, I couldn't. So back then it was pamphlets, handouts, brochures, and word of mouth. And so I'm like, well, what is a CNA? And so I learned what a CNA was because my mom had done the job. I don't remember what it was called before or whatever, but I realized like my mom had done it for a short amount of time, and my aunt that was a nurse, I was like, hey, what do they do or whatever. And so when she told me, I was like, oh no, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do that. Now I'm gonna tell you, my great grandmother, so I want to preface that and say it again. My great grandmother, when I told her that I was thinking about doing that program, and she said to me, she said, Theo, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you're gonna be slopping shit. And I was like, what? She was like, yeah, you're gonna be slopping shit, and you don't want to be doing that for the rest of your life. And I just remember her saying that to me, and I was like, "Oh my God." And so even as I went through my CNA journey, I was like, "Jesus." I just her voice in my hair, "You slopping shit, Thea." So, anywho, I was like, "I gotta do something though. Like, I gotta make some money. I'm about to have a kid. Like, I have to do something." And so I remember going back to my counselor after I made the decision, and I was like, "Yo, if I do this, like, how hard would it be for me to just go ahead and do the medical assistant class next year? And like, how hard would it be for me to transition and do that?" And then he was like, "Oh, well, we can put you, back on the list for, the QMA program, and then you can just do this for about a year or whatever." And then I was like, "Okay, cool." You know what I mean? Like I can do this now. I'm thinking about the slop and shit part, and I'm not really processing what that's gonna look like and feel like. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. And I really probably hadn't changed a baby's diaper at this point. So my lens for what that really is look like coming out of an adult bottom, I was like, I really didn't know. I was like, I could do, I could do that. That's not the biggest part of my job. Like I'll be doing other stuff, I'm sure. So I go through the program. I complete it in a couple of months, and I am working in a nursing home. Now, here's the thing. I was excited because at the time, this was in 2002. This is in 2002. So I'm excited at the time because the first job I got offered was like $12.50 an hour. Now that's not a bunch of money today, but back then to be making $12.50 an hour, you know what I mean? I was like, ooh, I'm winning. Like this is really it. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, Now I had other jobs before, but they were nowhere near like $12.50 an hour. Like, come on. And then if I worked the weekends, I got like an extra dollar, $1.50. I was like, oh, cha-ching, baby. Like, yes, I'm gonna be able to do this. And I convinced my daughter's mom. See, that's the thing. I convinced my daughter's mom to do the program with me. So we did it together, and we both did we both get a job at the same place? I don't remember if we both got the job at the same place, but I know we worked together at some point. But anyway, that's an aside to this story. So, first job or whatever, I got her to do it. She ended up working after I did too. I don't think we worked at the same place the first time. I can't remember. But so I started this job, and I'm like, okay, or whatever. And so I meet this woman, and she just was not she was not really nice to me at all. You know what I mean? She was an older woman. She just was not nice. And I just felt like she didn't like younger people coming in and doing what she was doing. And so she just really was like, I'm not training nobody. I'm not doing this. I mean, she was really rude too. So I was like, okay, cool. And so she'd be like, go do this, go do this. Now, mind you, doing the program doesn't prepare you for the actual real world experience. I just want to say that. Like it prepares you on some terminology kind of, but like when you get in the field, the applied stuff and what they're saying is totally different. So I digress, but she just would tell me to do things and I was like, I've never heard of that before. I've never heard of that. And so I made some really, really tough mistakes in the beginning or whatever. And I remember, one day, I remember her telling me, she was like, go do a bed check and do these couple of rooms or whatever. And so she sent me to do a bed check on these rooms. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I had no idea what that meant. So, like, I'm literally going in the rooms, like looking under the beds and stuff, and like I'm using the buttons to make sure the beds work. I'm literally thinking, like, you're checking the bed to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it. I didn't know that a bed check was actually checking to see if the patient had used the restroom in the bed. I didn't know that. And if they had a UDB, or a urinal that you were supposed to empty that. I didn't know that. And so I'm going in there and I'm crawling around on the floor and I'm looking underneath stuff. I'm scooting, people that have floor mats stuff over because I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me. So I finished that like quickly. She didn't say anything to me. She didn't say anything to me. And I left that day and I came back to like, yeah, we need to have a conversation. Like one of the supervisors, we need to have a conversation because I don't know what you did or didn't do, but yeah, there's no way. And so I was like, well, yeah, she told me to do it and I did the bed check or whatever. Now, mind you, nobody's still explaining to me like what I was supposed to do. So I'm like, oh my God. And mind you, this lady did not want to train me. So I didn't get to really see her do anything. Like she would just like go in these rooms and do this, go hand them this, go do that. So I never understood the concept of a bed check. Right. And I think at the beginning, she really was just like, well, help this person go to the bathroom and help them. And so I did what, what she told me to. She like, okay, they're going to, she'll tell you. And she, like that kind of thing. So anyway, I just wanted to put some context to how I got into the situation. And so anyway, I ended up figuring it out working with another lady. And I remember when we were doing the bed check together with the other lady, she was like, "Okay, now you do this and you make sure that you position them like this because and I told her I said, "So, I worked with old girl my first day I was like, well, probably my first 2 days, and I said, "She did not tell me, like, what a bed check was or anything." And the lady was like, "Oh, no." I was like, "Yeah." I was like and I told her the mistake I made. I was like, "I didn't know." And so we laughed, and she was like, "Oh my god." And she's like, "This is your first time?" I said, "Yes, it's my first time and my first job." And she's like, "Oh, okay." So anyway, needless to say, I went into being a CNA, and that was in 2002. And I did CNA work in and out until 2014 because I ended up doing an MA at some point for the medical assistant, but it was years down the road. I think that was like 2014, 2013, 2014. So anyway, so I did this for over 10 years as a CNA, right? And then later I did Med 8 so I could pass medicine for the last few years that I was in it. I always knew when I was doing it that I wanted to do something else. And I went to college, got a degree in business administration because I was like, you know what? Like, you need to do something practical. And maybe this whole nursing thing just isn't for you. I was like, I don't know. Maybe the doctor thing, I don't know, is not for you either. So I was like, okay, let me get a degree in business. Now they tell you, if you grew up in the time I did, there were all of these projections and all of these like whatever when they gather you up in the auditorium. I forgot what those were, concessions or whatever. But they would have you come in there so they could talk about like career growth, and by the year 2005 or 2010, there are going to be this many jobs, you're going to make this much money. And so I had remembered going to several of those and them saying like this business administration degree is going to be the hottest thing since than warm pancakes or whatnot, or fresh pancakes, however you say it. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to get a degree in business. I'm just going to do that, and surely I'll get a job as a manager somewhere, like, in my mind I'm thinking like Walmart or something. And so I'm like, I would get a job as a manager, which is kind of perfect because some of my very first jobs were at very small retailers, but I was like the manager or the assistant manager at these places. So I was like, you know what? I've done this before, and these people are going to make money. And with the degree, I'm going to be rich. And so, 2006, I went to college, and then I took a break. And then I was like, okay. And then in 2007, I went back. I was like, okay, let me get this together because I can't keep doing this all this time. And so I went back, and then I was like, okay, and actually I'm gonna switch to marketing. So then that happens, right? I'm like, well, maybe this business thing ain't for me. I'm gonna do marketing, which is still in the realm for me. And then I'm like, okay, no. I'm like, no. So I take the marketing curriculum for a year, and then I'm like, okay, no. So then the following year, I take I'm back to like, I want to be a psychiatrist and help people. But then I'm like, oh my God, do I have enough time to go through medical school? Because for some reason, I didn't know medical school was like a 10 to 14-year program. So I was like, oh my God, what else can I do? So I I looked into this human services situation, which is like a pathway to, getting like your social worker license, and then you can get, your degrees in social work or whatever. But so anyway, but human services was the program at the time. And so I did that for a year and I was like, okay, I kind of like this and this seems like it would be okay. But I want to tell you, I got into a class and I'm very, very grateful for this. But I got into a class and there was a woman that was a social worker and had been a social worker for a long time. And I love those kind of professors. And I believe that's the kind of professor I want to be at some point. I'm going to table that for my vision board because I keep bringing myself back to that idea. But she was just like very real world. And so there would be stuff that she would give us from the book and from her lesson plan. But then she would give us like some real world applied like knowledge and stuff to go along with it. And I remember we had this one, we had like some project. I can't remember what it was, but we had some project and we were kind of each group had like some part to do. My group had like the bulk of like the process and paperwork of it all. Like we had to like build programs and stuff like that. And so, I mean, at this time, yeah, computers were a thing, but she's asking us to put like binders together. So we got to have like 6 binders and stuff to create these programs. And I was just like, who is doing this? I was like, who is doing this? This has to be one of those things in college that they just have you do just to do it. And I remember after class one day, I was like, can I talk to you? And she was like, yeah. And so we started having a conversation. And I was like, realistically, when I graduate or we graduate, like, what does it look like? Like, what does our entry look like? What does the day to day look like? She was like, your group really is getting what your day to day looks like. You are going to be a paper pusher probably for the first few years of your career in it. And I said, well, how much money is in it? And she was like, it's equivalent to, lawyers when they first come out. And I understood the lawyer concept because I kind of got into that. Not as I didn't want to do that for my career, but I had got into that in just other ways. And I was like, oh, it's one of those things where you kind of got to pay your dues for a few years and whatnot. But I was like, me being drenched in paperwork, I'm annoyed already thinking about it. And so anyway, we had a very real world conversation and I was like, okay, this is not for me. I was like, this is not for me. I am not the paper pushing type of person. And so I went back the following year and finished. I went back the following year and finished my degree in business administration. So that was in 2010, the end of 2010, when I finished that. And so at this point, right, we're about 7, 8-ish years into this CNA journey. So I'm really tired of it at this point. And so I come out of it thinking, I'm gonna be rich. I'm about to have a job. I got this degree. I start applying at all these places, and nobody wants to hire me. Nobody wants to hire me. Not Best Buy, not Verizon, not Macy's, not H&M. Like none of these places want to hire me as a manager. And I am just like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I'm trapped. I am trapped. And I remember in 2012, I remember in 2012 going back to school and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to school and I'm gonna just complete. I had gotten my associates. My first degree was an associate's degree. I was like, I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna get my bachelor's, and maybe if I get my bachelor's, I can get these jobs. But I applied for store managers. I applied to be like the HR or the business manager at some of these nursing homes, like places that I probably like. I had worked at Verizon before, or a Verizon rep or something like that. I worked at Best Buy before seasonally, but none of these places would hire me once I got my degree. They wouldn't hire me as a manager. And I was like, this is crazy. And I must have replied to Macy's because I always wanted to work for Macy's. I must have applied like 20 or so times, and each time, no, 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 no. But I remember doing this interview in 2012. I did an interview in 2012 at like this it was some kind of firm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, but it was some kind of firm in Fort Wayne, and I felt like it was great. I toured the office and I was like, okay, this is for sure going to be my break. Like, this is going to be great. The guy's like, are you sure you're going to be able to handle this? Like, this is real work and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I'm gonna really be in here doing this. And I can't remember if it was like a finance firm or what, but it was definitely like a big office room with like desks in there. And I don't even know if the desks were like really separated by a cubicle. I don't even remember that being the thing, but it looked like a newsroom to me. And so I remember going to that interview. He's like, are you sure you can handle this? I just want to make sure that you're going to be locked in. I'm like, listen, I'm down. I've been waiting for this. And so I walk away thinking, yes, I got it. I just know I got it the way this man is talking. No, I get a phone call that they would not be moving forward with me. And so I was like, God, like, what do I do? I was like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so I ended up getting a job at a nursing home working overnight. I was like, well, I guess I'm going back to the bricks of it all. I guess I'm leaving some things out. I had started a business. And it wasn't a business that I did full time, but I had started a business and then I would just work and then I would kind of do the business on the side. But I had a business that I was doing and it made some money. It made enough money, right, to break even in a period where I was just like, I'm not gonna, work in the nursing home or whatever, but also going back to school. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna do that. Well, I was like, I was like, at the time, I was like, I need a real job. I need a real job. And so I was like, okay, put the business on the back burner and let's do this job or whatever. And so I got a night job at a nursing home and I think they paid me like 14.50, which at the time, this is like I said, 2012. I was like, okay, this is pretty decent money. Also that same year, my mom kind of saw how hard I was working and was like, you want to just come home? You want to come home for a year? Like, you want to come home for a year? Like, you know, you can just, either if your lease is up or whatever the case may be, like, you could just come and stay for a year and then decide where you want to go. Maybe go to California. You always talked about going to California. And so I was like, yeah, I have always talked about going to California. I have. And so I sat on it for probably like a month or so. And I think in like March, because this is like early 2012, when I started having this like idea or whatever. But yeah, the idea happened like early and then I moved there, things happened or whatever. I ran my business in that in between time, went back to school. And then late in 2012, I got the job at the nursing home, like probably around my birthday, August. I ended up getting the job. I want to make sure I give you the proper timeline. So, early 2012, I want to say April, May, somewhere in between there. I was like, okay, I'm going to move home for a year. And, maybe my mom is right. I can figure it out, school, business, whatever. And so, anywho, so now I got you guys caught up with the right timeline. So, anyway, I do that interview at the firm. That didn't go right. Somewhere around my birthday in August, I'm like, okay, I got to get a real job because I really just need a real job. And so I get this position at a nursing home, and then I get a second job as a flex associate at Macy's, just because I'm like, I want to stack up as much money as I can before I make this next move in my life. Because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to come home and not have to pay any bills, hopefully, is what I thought at the time. But anyway, moving moving along. Um, so I worked both jobs and I just was like head down, work, 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 save, 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 work, 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 save, save, save. And I remember I would be, working with the patients and making them laugh and I'd be singing to them and just having conversations. I had some that were like nonverbal, but I know one used to be like a judge, one was like a college professor. And so I'd literally be in the college professor's room, like looking at books, looking at like her achievements, and then I would just talk to her about it. And, I would just say, like, I would be like, yeah, just move your eyes if like, if, whatever. And so we had like this whole like nonverbal kind of situation. And so when I came in there, I could tell she was very appreciative because I basically was coming into her world. But I loved the part where I was like giving, back to people in some kind of a way. But at the same time, knowing that I need to get the heck up out of here. And so, moment of clarity for me really struck. Like, I had known all of this redirection was happening. My mom was like, hey, move home for a second. All of this stuff was happening, and I wasn't seeing it for what it was, right? I wasn't seeing all of the no's. I wasn't seeing any of the signs. Like, they just were not making sense. Like, they just were not making sense to me at all. And so, I was in this patient's room, and we were just having a discussion, and she said to me, she said, "Michael, why are you here?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Why are you here with us? Why are you wasting your time with us?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not wasting my time with you." I was like, "I just this is my job, and this is what I have to do." And she said, "Michael, you could be doing so much more. You could be doing so much more." She said, A lot of people come in and out of here." She said, "I'm an old lady. I've seen a lot." She was like, "But just your presence," she was like, "your level of conversation." Yeah, she was like, "You could be doing so much more. You could be like a president or VP somewhere, and you're here wasting time." And she's like, "What, like, do you have any education? Do you have any plans to get any?" So she's having a real life conversation with me in that moment. And I said to her, I was like, "Well, yeah, I do." I was like, I went to school for this, that, da 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 da. And she was like, "But what do you want to do?" She's like, "But what is it that you wanna do?" So, basically, I had been giving her all of these things that were practical, like, "Yeah, I got a business degree because they're gonna make some money and da 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 da," and all of this stuff that I told her and, my kid and all this other stuff. And what she really picked up on was, like, that I was doing the stuff just to be doing it, and she was like, "What do you want to do?" And much like this moment that I'm in, redefining myself and trying to figure out what's next, then I was like, I don't know. I was like, I honestly don't know because like this conversation is really just making me think about some things. She said, I'm going to tell you this: do what you love and the money will come. Do what you love and the money will come. Now, here's the interesting thing that as I'm saying that in this podcast, in this moment of transition, I'm reminded of that. So, in giving you my original moment of clarity, strangely, I'm having another moment of clarity. But that's an aside. That conversation with her in 2012 just stayed with me for it'll probably stay with me forever because it was just the way it was the veracity in which she had that conversation with me that just jarred me so in that moment. And I remember walking out that day and really just like, Michael, what are you doing? Like, you've done all of this for survival. You've done all of this because you've had to, and your capacity is much greater and you've known it, and yet you keep doing these things because they seem more practical. And so I kept working. I kept thinking about what she said. And that is when I kind of started challenging my curiosities because I truly didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew she kept saying to me, this experienced woman was saying to me, do what you love and the money will come. The problem is, I am one of those people that truly I could do anything. I mean, I really could. The way my brain works, I could literally do anything. And the problem with that is when you can do everything, nothing seems like it's the perfect fit. And so I started challenging my curiosities because truly I was like, I don't know how to shift from that being practical and logical about it to that inner, just letting my creativity and letting my curiosity and my passion, like, where do I find that? But I was like, I just got to start where the question marks are. Like, what are the things that I've been thinking about that I wanted to try? Much like college, I was like, well, maybe I just, maybe that's what I need to do. Continue to just try things and see which one makes me feel good, which one seems like work without working. And so my moment of clarity was brought on by just a random by chance conversation at probably midnight or so with a woman that I didn't think that I would have that conversation with. And it has stuck with me and affected me even until this moment where I just had, another moment of like, oh my God, those moments of clarity often come, like I said earlier, in the unlikely form or the unusual forms, and you can miss it. You can miss it. And there could be multiple signs. When I think back, I lost this job that I thought was a good job. I got fired. Yeah, I got fired. That's the part I didn't mention to you. I got fired from my job in 2012. Or was it 2011? Somewhere in between that first beginning space of 2012 or 2011, somewhere in between there. It gets a little fuzzy after a while, but you get where I'm going. I got fired from this job at a call center. I knew I wasn't supposed to work there because, God, I don't have the patience to be answering phones. But it was a good paying job at the time. And I was like, okay, it's the opportunity to make some money. I knew I wasn't going to grow with that job. They fired me. I was like, okay, fine, did my business. And then my mom was like, you want to move home? And I was like, no, I'll be fine. I'm making enough money to break even. And so as I sat with it, I was like, maybe my mom is on to something. Like, let me go ahead and move. Like, let me, So I moved with her and then I started applying for jobs. And then that firm that I thought was going to be great ended up turning me down. And then I was back in the thing or whatever. And then I had this conversation with this lady. But I think all of that was supposed to be positioning and redirection. And I didn't see it for what it was at the time because survival mode had me thinking about what was practical and what was logical and not what was really my purpose or my passion. And so, as I say, I leaned into my curiosities and kind of like the question marks. I really still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I worked, and then I had these friends that had moved to Dallas, Texas, and they were like, "Come visit." Now this was like maybe November of that of 2012. It was like November of 2012. And so I was like, I don't know. But I came to visit and I stayed for like about a week or two, week and a half. And I enjoyed my time in Dallas. I'm back in Dallas now, but I enjoyed my time and I was like, okay, great. Like this is amazing. Also, the first time that I had been away from home for like that amount of time, I wanna say. Like, I had been to Florida, but only for like a weekend. I had been like locally, maybe like Chicago or something for a day or two, but I'd never been anywhere outside of Indiana. I had never really, well, other than like visiting my father in Alabama and then some places I grew up. But as an adult, I had never really been anywhere just on some like, you know, I'm visiting type situation. And so my two friends were like, "You should move here." And I was like, what do you mean I should move here?" Now, mind you, these were friends that I met while I was in Indiana, and then we just kept in touch, loosely kept in touch. And then when they invited me out a couple of times, and I wasn't really like, I was like, whatever. But this time, for some reason, I said yes, and I stayed. And when I got there, I had a good time. But the week, or yeah, the week that I was gonna leave, one of the friends was like, "Hey, like, I'm serious. You should move here." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I am trying to figure out my life." I was like, "So, I mean, I guess I could move to Texas." I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "But then I have to find a job, get my license transferred, just all of that stuff or whatever." He said, "I can get you a job." He was working as a district manager for a company. He's like, "I can get you a job as a manager. I can get you a job." And I was like, "Oh, sweet." Like, I've been wanting to get a job as a manager for a minute. Didn't care what kind of manager it was. But I was like, "Okay." Money wasn't great, but it was enough. So I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Just send me your resume and I'll send it to my boss." And so I'm like, whatever. He got to get it approved by his boss. And I'm like, huh. And so I was like, whatever. So my last day there, well, the day before my last day, he goes, "You didn't send me your resume." And so I was like, "Oh, okay." So I send it to him, and then I get on the plane the next morning, and um, I get home, whatever, not really paying attention. And there's a voicemail on my phone where his boss called me and offered me the job. And I was like, "Oh wow, this is really, really serious." So his boss called, offered me the job, left it, he left it on my voicemail. I was like, "This is crazy, right? This is crazy." And so I was like, "Okay, great." I put my notice in at the nursing home. I tried not to think about it too much because if I do, I will do the logical and analytical thing about how crazy it is. And I was like, "You know what? We are not existing in that space where we do that anymore." And so I said to myself, this is your opportunity to just go. And so that's what I did. I gave my notice to the nursing home, 2-week notice, and I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay, I'm out of here. I'm out of here." Um, so anyway, I ended up moving to Texas, and I took that job. Now that job wasn't the job for me. It was a housekeeping manager. But I met some wonderful people in there and I did some amazing things, but that job was not for me. And I was like, dang it, can't get away from these nursing homes, can I? But inside of that, right, one of the administrator that I worked, one of the administrators that I worked for really took a liking to me and she wanted me to be her marketing director. She was like, "Would you consider, coming on as a marketing director? Because this is not what you should be doing." So again, redirection kind of happening. And I'm like, okay. Now, here's the thing, she believed that I could do it, but you go through the process or whatever, some things happened that didn't work out. And I was like, okay. And we just gonna keep on chugging along. And I did I did the same kind of work up until um 2014, 2015. 2015. No, technically, I think 2017. I know this is getting a little chaotic, but I'm trying to recall all of this in the right timeline. Okay. I knew I had to get out of the medical field in the way that I was in it because I just didn't feel good about it anymore. I didn't feel like I was making a difference. I didn't feel like I was making anybody's day. I felt like I was just going through the motions and I was tired. And I was like, I was praying incessantly. I was like, I have to do something. Like, this just is not me anymore. And I just can't continue to do this. And so I went to work every day just very, very frustrated, like very, very frustrated. And so one day I was like, "You know what, Michael? Maybe you're going to have to start over. Maybe you're going to have to start over." And I was like, "So what does that mean for your life if you start over?" right? Like, are you going to be able to sustain? Are you going to be able to, like, are you going to be able to provide? Like, are you going to be able to do these things? And I completely just put my faith and trust in God. I was like, you know what, God, you haven't led me astray until this up and at this point. So I was like, I'm just going to go for some of these jobs that I really didn't think of, and that's how I broke into HR. And I didn't leave the job. This is why the timeline was a little wonky for me, because when I started in that first job, it was just a flex job. So I didn't it wasn't full-time work and it wasn't consistent work, but it was enough for me to gain the knowledge and the experience to at least get me in the space. And then I was like, I'll figure it out from there. I will figure it out from there. And so somewhere in 2016, that turned into a full-time job, and I ended up letting one of the jobs go. I had a job at a hospital and a assisted living place. So I left the hospital job because I was like, okay, let me go over here. I still stayed at the other one, night shift. And then I was like, okay, I can't work full time at both of these. And then when the conversations came about promoting, I was like, okay, I know exactly what I want, and you guys are asking me to promote into a different lane. They wanted me in operations and not HR. And I was like, I can do the operational thing, but I want you guys to know that I really, really feel like I need to be in HR. Like, there was something in me that was like, I need to be in HR. It was some curiosity that had been there. And I said, I need to be in HR. And so they were like, well, you do this for a year and we will make sure that you get into HR. And I said, okay, career pathing, sure. I can do this for a year. I can do anything. And so that year, I said, okay, this is my sign to let that go. Like that life I should have never had, I guess, but that I did for so long. I said, I have to completely let that go. And so I did. I just let it go. And I was like, okay, like, Lord, you got me. I was like, God, you got me. And I was just like, okay. And I let it go. And then it just felt like from there, things just kept going up. And although during it, it didn't feel like it, it felt like it took a long time. But like as I look over the few years that from there to like getting, three promotions and then getting elevated positions at other places, I'm like, that honestly wasn't that much time. It really wasn't that much time. And then the success that came with it. And I'll never forget saying to myself, at I want to say $55,000 a year. I remember saying to myself, "My God, today this is probably three times as much as I was making on both of those jobs. If it wasn't three times, it was close to more than what I was making at all three jobs combined." You know what I mean? When I was doing the hospital, nursing home, and then I had the flex job at the beginning, I was like, "This is way more than that." And then it's like this voice kept saying, if you can make 55, you can make 65. And if you can make 65, you can make 75. If you can make 75, you can make 100,000. And I know that was probably a big jump for some of y'all. Like, wait a minute, Mike. In my mind, that is literally how it happened. That is literally how it happened. And so, you know, 55 and then 65, 60-ish, close to 65, and then 75 popped up, you know what I'm saying? And then at 75 I was like, I might as well go for six figures, because I don't know, for whatever reason, I didn't have this. I didn't have this lofty goal. I really didn't have a lot of like lofty goals that then I wasn't asking the universe for the biggest thing or whatever, but I believed that I could do it. I was like, I can do anything, but I just didn't have a defined goal or destination. It was just always, I need to do more. I need to do more kind of thing. It's a little bit different these days. So I remember being at that job and making $75,000 a year, and I was like, "I'm comfortable." I was like, "This is very, very comfortable for me," but my God, 100,000 would be chef's kiss. And I'll never forget this other moment. And so I was at this company and I went and got a certification to kind of bolster me, wanting to, do a little bit more, get a higher an elevated position. And so I went through this program. I got the PHR certification, which is a professional human resources certification that the people are getting. It's either that one or the SHRM. And so I did that. And so then I went up for this position. Now, maybe this wasn't the position for me, or maybe it wasn't the position with this company, but racism was at play and it was very blatant. And so I didn't get the position, but I also walked away from the company because of it. Excuse me. I felt like if the person that was at the helm of human resources for the company could display just blatant racism, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it. I was like, I ain't going to be able to do it. So I just was like, hey guys, I got to go. I can't. They was like, no, no, no. Is there anything we can do? Can we give you a raise? And I remember, it was like some VPs and stuff like that. And then my boss at the time, and it was like they were having discussions and my boss was like, it's not about the money for him. It's not about the money for him. But yeah, my boss was like, it's not about the money for him. It really is not about the money for him. And it's always been about the work for me. Like once I made the shift in my mind that yeah, my mind is very analytical, and yeah, I like to do the logical thing and I usually see that first. And sometimes, more money does feel great. It sounds great. It feels great in one way, but maybe not in another, in a more fulfilling way. But it just wasn't. I was like, I think once I got to that 55, and I was like, I actually can probably do what I want to do at this stage. Then I got to 75 and it felt really comfortable. And then when it got to the 100K, honestly, I was like, I don't want whatever I do after this, I don't want it to be about the dollar amount. Money is important because I need it to survive. I do. I need it to make a living, but I don't want anything that I do going forward to be about the money or to be about survival. I want it to mean something. I want it to be impactful to people. I want to be able to have fun while I do it. And when I started interviewing after that, and I was being asked, so what is it that you really want to bring to the company, or what is it that you really, what is your goal in coming, or whatever. And I said fun and impact. And I remember every interview I did and they asked a question along those lines, I said fun and impact. I want to have fun and I want to create impact for people. And that is what I have run on since then. So it's not about a title for me. It is truly about the work. The money is important because you have to assign value. You have to assign value. That's just a part of the business, but that is secondary to the work for me. I will not I will not be undervalued. I will not be undervalued. Let's be clear. I won't be undersold in the categories, but no decision I make will be purely about money. And that has been one of the things that I have allowed to be my north star in the career section of it. But the moment before I forget it was I interviewed for two roles before I accepted after leaving that company. I interviewed for 2 roles. I accepted both job offers. Now, the first job offer was about $10,000 away from the 100. The base salary was about 10,000 off from the base. Now, obviously, bonuses, equity, incentives like that would have put me well over it for the position that I was taking. So it would have been fine. But I accepted that position because there was another one that I had been waiting for just a while, and it was taking a minute. And I was like, well, obviously they don't want me. And I just remember being like, I'm going to reach out to them because I accepted the other one and I was like, okay, I'm going to start next week. And something said to me, call them and let them know that you have other prospects and you really need to know something soon. And so I called, I left that message, and like the next day I got a phone call saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, like we definitely want you. We were just trying to figure out what made sense. Like we've been interviewing a lot of people for a couple positions and we really need somebody strong for this other position. And we were just trying to have conversations like if you would be willing." And I was like, sure. And that's how I ended up in Baltimore. And instead of, because I was going to go to Virginia. And so I ended up in Baltimore. And I said, well, sure. Didn't know anything about it, but I was like, I'm up for a challenge. Like, it's the work. It's the work. I probably could have gone to Virginia and just did that in my sleep. Baltimore was a challenge for me, and I needed that challenge. I needed it so bad because I thrive on those challenges. And so I ended up there, and I remember telling myself that I was going to do it for a year. When I first took the position, I said, I'm going to do it for a year. And then as I got in the position and realized that it was going to be a bigger challenge, I said, maybe I'll do it for 2. I ended up doing it for 3.5 years, which is a little bit different for me in one role. But I did it for 3.5 years. And after that third year, I just started praying again incessantly, like, okay, I'm in Baltimore. My personal life situation has changed because I'm single again after being in a relationship for 5 years. I was like, God, like, what am I supposed to do? I feel like my assignment is up here. I feel like I don't have anything else to contribute to this. Like, what is, like, can you show me what is here? Like, can you show me? Because personally, there's nothing here that's exciting me. I feel like I'm working and nothing is happening. So I was like, Lord, like, what is it that you would have for me? Lord, allow me to see the door you want me to see, and allow me to walk through it freely. And so that's part of my prayer. And so I was like, I don't know what's going on. But then my last few months, there was this surge of like emotional energy coming from a few people. And I realized very, very quickly what that assignment was, because there was a moment where there were a lot of men coming to me and being very, very soft and tender. And they weren't that soft and tender with their feelings. And I was like, well, what is going on here? Like they were just opening up to me in such a way. And I was like, this is a little bit different. Like, this is a little bit different. Like, I've not interacted in that way. Like, I've had conversations, deep conversations, but I was like, this is very, very different. But I appreciated it because I needed that level of experience from men because I don't really have that a lot. I hadn't had that a lot. So I was like, I needed that too. And then there was a person that I needed to make sure that she reached the goal. And that was when I knew. I said, okay, this is the last thing that I have to do before I leave. It is the last thing without doubt that I have to do before I leave. And I knew it was her because she asked to pray with me one day. She's like, Mike, I don't know if this is offensive to you, but can I pray? I just feel like, she's like, I don't know. God is just telling me. And I said, absolutely. And I don't usually get into religious conversations with a lot of people because I just don't want to go there. But I felt an immediate sense of like, comfort in praying with her. And I said, absolutely, we can. And we prayed together. and stuff like that. And that is the moment that I knew that this assignment for me ended when she got where she needed to go, and she did. And so I'm in this new space in my life where I asked for time to reignite my creativity and time to figure out just what it's like to not be tied to a machine and not to be tied to survival or or anything like that. And it has been a journey, y'all. It has been scary, but as I always tell other people, do the thing that scares you. And so it's been scary to not have a safety net of a job. It's been very, very scary to not have that. And it's still scary now because I haven't figured it all the way out yet. Like, I have my faith, but I always have a little piece of worry. But maybe by the time this comes out, that will have changed, to be honest with you. But in this moment, um, I wanted to be sure that I gave you all the behind the curtains, the when you're in the trenches trying to figure things out, when you feel like you are just at an impasse, like and you're just like, I don't know, and then you think you see a sign, but you're like, maybe that wasn't the sign. The sign will come often in a number of different ways. The subtle signs are the ones we tend to miss. We tend to miss the more subtle signs, right? The redirection from losing your job, the redirection from getting that position out of survival, the redirection of that, you know what I mean? The person that's like, why are you here? The person that says maybe you should come over here. Sometimes we miss that, and we write that off as coincidence. We sometimes will write that off as coincidence, but understand that sometimes those unlikely things within that are really the things that are meant to keep us on course and to point us in the right direction. So maybe that little tug didn't work, but inside that there was a pothole or there was a rock that you tripped over. Whatever that looks like for you, that thing is probably your next turning point to get you, where you need to go. And again, it's sometimes that unlikely thing that you would never think of, or that thing that you think is insignificant. But I'm going to tell you this, if you ever have a moment like I had with the lady that just shook you to your core or that just stuck with you forever, I implore you to revisit it like I just did with you all. And in real time, I just had another moment, right? A few moments ago. I implore you to tap back into that because I think when I finish talking to you all, I'm going back in the think tank and recentering around that because I think that message still holds true today. And so I'm going to give that to everyone else out there. If you are looking for your defining moment, your turning point, and you've maybe missed a few signs, I want to tell you to do what you love and the money will come. My hope is that we are all empowered and inspired to do the thing that makes us feel most alive, the thing that makes us feel most happy, the thing that gives us so much peace and allows us to grow in a space that just feels like home. My hope is that we all get to experience that. This has been the Michael Experience Podcast. Thank you all for the time, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.